is no longer a choice. It's not even a knowing. It's not even a realization.
No, because there has to be a persona to have a realization.
Exactly.
It's not something that
Exactly.
one realizes, and no persona is ever going to get it.
It's Vedanta.
It's what remains. And whether one is in that expressible dance of Shakti and that bliss of Shakti, or one is more within that resonant of the quiet, and one can go flip back and forth,
Thank
but
you.
it's still not two, not two, not two. They're not separate. It's not separate. It's just absolutely not. Shakti is the dance. And that dance is always, trying to impress Shiva, or that which is the quietude. Yeah.
This is beautiful. You've really taken a step in the direction where I hope we could go with this discussion. And I would just like to introduce the notion of bhava.
Mm-hmm.
That
Yeah,
there
bhava
are
is
bhavas
yes.
within the eternally illumined condition. So it can, and this is where all the symbolism comes from, all the different gods with all the different faces, all the different mudras, all the different communicative tastes of the one divine reality.
Mm-hmm.
And so for
Well,
me,
there
it's
are many
filled with,
different flavors. There are many, many different flavors. That's what's fun about it. Yeah. In the transient, there are many different flavors, and none of those flavors are separate from the divine is, or absolute, which is one. Doesn't mean that it cancels it out, that there's only one flavor. Oh no. Many flavors. That's what's the fun of it. Absolutely. Yeah. I think that some of the problem it is when, with teachers and teachings, many times we're talking about the same thing, but the way that it's described in a different avenue. And so that maybe one teacher uses one word to represent something, and another teacher uses a different word to represent the same things, and then there gets to be some conflict and thinking that, oh, they're saying something different, and so I think that more teachers need to come together and spend more time together and find out that really what's being said is very much of the same thing, rather than being at loggerheads with each other.
another myth that needs to be busted around realization is that there are behaviors or stereotypes which will be exemplified, such as a teacher will always appear quiet.
Yes.
A teacher will never get angry. There'll be no sexual desire. There'll be no sadness. There will be no relative play going on the internal, in the name of no ego. Because there's no ego there, how can you possibly feel anything other than that quietness? So that's another problem, I think, that needs to be addressed in the spiritual dialogues among teachers.
Well, somebody has developed a specific persona, and that, parabdha karma plays out. It just plays out. One's basic personality doesn't change. What the world is interacting with, that doesn't change. What changes is the consciousness. That's what changed. One is living in a radically different consciousness, but that has nothing to do with the outward manifestation of what the form has done, or what it continues to do.
Exactly.
Nothing to do with that.
And nothing really changes.
No, not in that external thing. It doesn't change.
Consciousness is completely radicalized. That's the phrase I like to use.
Yeah, everything is blown out. Nirvana means blown out, and that's what happens. That conditioned mind of suffering is blown out, and the illusion is blown out, and life continues.
And all ideas of representational enlightenment are blown out. You don't know who you are. You don't know how you are going to behave. That kind of remnant self-consciousness that is always looking back in on itself has been erased.
It's gone. There's nothing to think about. There's nothing to try to judge. Should I do this? Should I do that? Oh my God, what are people going to think of this or that? None of that, because there's nobody there to judge anything. There's nobody there to you don't give a rat's ass. It's just flow. That's all. It's just flow that remains. It's none of that, oh, I need to act like this, and no, spiritual teachers and realized beings are not floating on air. You know, we just don't. We actually walk on feet, and we eat, and we, you know, everything that normal people do. One goes into being more normal and more ordinary rather than less.
There's this direct connection with reality. What else can you be at that point besides your naturally arising self?
But absolutely ordinary.
Absolutely.
There's nothing special about you anymore. On the path, you
Until
think
you
you're
look into
special.
their eyes, until you look deeply into the soul of where that person is residing. And there's where the notion of transmission arises. Of what use is the teacher? What is the value of sitting with a teacher? Is it that they're just up there to tell you some things about enlightenment, or perform jnana yoga with you, or bhakti yoga, always instructing you? Or are they in some sense the entire field that is the awakened condition, and present themselves as that and in that, so that anybody can even acquire darshan for that being by absorbing the transmission?
Right, darshan is one of the most important things. That's really stressed on this path as well, that the students come and take the darshan as often as possible, because there is a transmission that takes place. That illumination and that reality of where the teacher resides is working on that heart center. It's working on the conditionings. It's working on awakening Kundalini, awakening that consciousness so it can fold in on itself and find out what's there and what's not. So very important.
In this context, Ramana Maharshi said that the guru is always pulling you on the outside toward the self, and the inner self is pulling you from within.
Right.
But they're both mutually complementary forces.
Right, right.
If I understood that correctly,
Yeah,
if I repeated that right.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That's why when you hear truth, it's going to resonate, okay? It's going to resonate within. We try to awaken and enliven that within the student. It's not that we're going to give you something externally. You know, students come and, why don't you give it to me? Why don't you just hand it to me? Well, nobody can hand you something, you already are, you know? It can only be enlivened where you yourself then perceive.
When I was with U.G. Krishnamurti, he told me his story personally when he met Ramana Maharshi, and how he did not want to go visit him, but one of his friends, I guess to the point of annoyance,
Kept bugging
got
him.
his way with him. So he went to see Ramana, and he said, as a cocky 15-year-old, he approached Ramana and said, okay, so they say you're this, can you give it to me? And Ramana said, I can give it, can you take it?
Oh, he's the one that you said that to.
Yes.
Yes, I read there was somebody that came, I didn't know it was UG. It wasn't made specific who he said that to, but yes, I remember him saying that. Can you take it though? I can give it, can you take it?
So, as far as I'm concerned, it's always being given. There's a constant stream of bliss-field consciousness that is arising, transmitting,